Hope everyone's having a pleasant late afternoon. It's September 30th. Beautiful, beautiful day in the Midwest. We just weighed in South Bend here, and we were at 16.5 in our Super Duty with our 28-foot enclosed featherlight that you can see there in the mirror. And we picked up about 7 pallets of freight in Chicago this afternoon. We were in Michigan last night, Ann Arbor, home of the Wolverines. And we're headed back to Pennsylvania today, this evening. But I wanted to continue the discussion about a couple things. And the first is whether you should tow a trailer that's in the 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 pound range with a Super Duty or an F-150. And this is a good case in point. So what you see there is, again, 16.5 total. And that's an 8,700 pound truck with about a 7,800 pound trailer hitched up to it. In terms of where the weight is distributed, the truck, which again starts at about 87, is almost 10,007 if you add the drive axle and the steer axle. The steer axle is always around 5,000, 5,100. The drive axle is what carries the hitch weight of that gooseneck trailer there. And that starts out at around 3,700 empty, and it's all the way up to 55 today, so it's got about 1,800 pounds of pin weight on it, okay? If you're following that. I know it's a lot of numbers, but all told, the truck plus the pin weight adds up to about 10,600. And then you got another 5,800 pounds on the trailer axles for a total of 16.5. And so again, the trailer weight is the 5,800 pounds that are on its axles plus about 1,800 pounds of pin weight. And 58 plus 1,800 is about 7,600, if I got that right. So again, about an 8,700 pound truck and about a 7,600 pound trailer, if you're following that. And a couple observations. The first one is when we were about a week or so ago towing our this same trailer with the diesel F-150. Again, it was kind of struggling, and it was only about a 6,500 pound trailer at that point, not 78. So it was more than 1,000 pounds lighter. And it was just having a hard time because that diesel F-150 with the 3.0 so-called PowerStroke or baby PowerStroke, it's just kind of underpowered. It's got 250 horsepower, just over 400 pound-feet of torque. It's got a very tall final drive, and so as a result, the RPMs are way, way down when you're in top gear. You've got to lock out 10th and 9th when you're towing, and so you really top off in 8th gear, and you're going about 2,000 RPM at maybe 65, 70 miles an hour. And the engine is just not really happy to do what you're asking it to do. I mean, you can tell it doesn't want to be doing what you're asking it to do. On the other hand, this truck right here is more than happy. And it will tow a 65, 7,000, 7,500, 8,000, 10, 20,000 pound trailer almost in its sleep. Sorry about the glare. We'll be through that in a minute. And so again, to continue that discussion, everybody says, well, an 8,000 pound trailer, that's no big deal for an F-150. A 10,000 pound trailer, I can pull that with my F-150 all day. I hate to say it, but we would kind of beg to differ. At least in the F-150 that we own, which is the 3.0 PowerStroke diesel. For the simple fact that it just doesn't have the juice to pull a trailer of that weight comfortably. remotely comfortably. And by virtue of the fact that we have a very, very tall final drive, the engine is constantly struggling. It's constantly hunting for gears. You're constantly having to lock out the upper gears, 9th and 10th, or maybe even 8th, 9th, and 10th. And that's even with like a 4,000 or 5,000 pound trailer, maybe 6,000, and definitely 6,500. That truck could not tow this trailer, which is again 7,800 today with the freight that we have loaded in it, because of the pin weight. The pin weight would crush that rear axle. And again, if you remember, we had fully maxed out that truck's GVW, which was only 7,100 pounds, with the pin weight that we had on the 6,500 pound trailer. So, so that's out of the question. And at the same time, some people would say it's overkill to tow a small little 7,800 pound trailer with an F-350. And it's absolutely the case that this trailer doesn't remotely challenge this truck, because this truck is built. This particular truck has again a max gross combined weight rating of 40,000, and a max trailer weight, a max gooseneck trailer weight of like 31,800. So yeah, a 7,800 pound trailer won't remotely begin to challenge it. But as we discussed the last time we talked, you want to have a truck that has capabilities that are far in excess of what you're asking it to do, because that means it's never going to be stressed. And as a result, it's never going to stress you out and never going to put a lot of mental workload on you. And the name of the game when you're driving lots and lots of hours over long distances is to keep your mental workload down, so that you're not all worn out at the end of the day and making bad decisions that could jeopardize your safety. All right, hang on just a second here. So yes, again, a 7,800 pound trailer doesn't remotely begin to tax the capabilities of this truck. But you don't want a trailer that is going to stress out your truck. And so that's all we're going to say about that subject. Again, the Featherlight 28 foot, by the way, model 4941. This thing tows just great. It's all aluminum. So it's only about 4,000 plus change empty. And as a result, it's got tons and tons and tons of available capacity for cargo. The GVW on it is, 16,000 pounds? Can't remember. I think it's 14,000, if I remember right. And a 14,000 pound GVW in a trailer that weighs 4,000 pounds empty means that you've got almost 10,000 pounds of available cargo capacity in that thing. You will basically more than triple its empty weight fully loaded, and still barely be maxing out the axles on it. And that's a great thing. It's all aluminum, so it's never going to rust. It's got a nice tapered nose, and so it tows just great back there. It's a gooseneck trailer, so it's extremely stable. And we pretty much never tow anything bigger than about a 4,000 or 5,000 pound, 3,000 or 4,000 pound bumper pull, because of the stability issue. A gooseneck trailer will almost never try to put you off the road. A bumper pull, conventional, absolutely. A couple things to discuss here. The first thing is, if you see our MPGs, we've only been going 80 or 90 miles since we got done loading in Chicago. And it's been almost completely flat. We're on Interstate 80 going east through like Illinois, Indiana. It's totally flat out here in this part of the Midwest. And so we're at 14.2 miles to the gallon. And in a truck that's this big and heavy, 14.2 highway miles to the gallon are astounding. And I would venture to say that you'd get that same MPG or close to it pulling a much heavier trailer because at steady state on flat ground, the weight of the trailer is really, and not a lot of traffic, to be clear. The weight of the trailer is really not that big a factor in your miles, in your MPGs, in your fuel economy. The bigger factor is your gearing and your aerodynamics. And the aerodynamics, believe it or not, of a gooseneck trailer are great, especially with a tapered nose. If you got a flat nose, that's another story. But this trailer tows just great. And again, we're getting 14 plus miles to the gallon. Going the speed limit, which is like 70 on level ground with mild traffic. Going through the mountains yesterday morning when we were coming west from Pennsylvania, it was in like the 12 to, upper 12s to low 13s. And that was going up and down some steep mountain rises or passes, I should say. Very, very steep hills in Pennsylvania, through the Appalachians, the Alleghenies, so on and so forth. But again, when you get to Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, it's flat, at least in northern Indiana. And so with a big heavy truck, an 8,700 pound truck, like this Super Duty here, loaded with the truck and trailer to 15,000 plus, almost 16. Actually, I'm sorry, 16 plus thousand. It's possible to get really, really good gas mileage and fuel economy. So that's the first thing I'll pass along. The second thing is, we talked about it the last time we chatted, and it's this 373 final drive. Now look at our speed. It's 64 miles an hour. Let's get around this guy. And we're not in top gear either. But when we're in top gear, when we're in 10th gear, going like 68 or 70, the engine's turning almost a little bit fast. It's turning like 1,800 RPMs in top gear. And that's a lot faster than we're used to, because in our the other dually we have, the Duramax, the 2011 Duramax, it's only got a 6-speed Allison. It's not that new 10-speed so-called Allison. But it's turning a lot slower than 1,800 RPMs in top gear. It's turning like between 14 and 1,600 at like 70 miles an hour. So again, 10th gear, let's call it just shy of 1,800 RPMs at like 68 or 70 miles an hour. And that's just a little bit fast. And I know the truck is built to tow a 31.8K trailer with a 40,000 gross combined weight rating. And so it needs to be a little bit, it needs to have some strong gears to be able to do that. And you don't need like a 410 or a 411 or a 430, obviously. But we had thought like a 373 was what you really needed, towing a big trailer with a heavy duty pickup. And in reality, you don't need a 373. You don't even need a 355 unless you're going to absolutely tow 20 plus thousand on a regular basis, up and down steep hills. If you're towing a lot less than 20,000 and you're not going up and down the mountains in like the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, the Appalachians in Pennsylvania, maybe the Sierras in California, you don't need a 373. You definitely don't need like a 410. And in reality, you don't even need the 355 that we have now, because it's kind of overkill to be running down the road at 68, 70 miles an hour, going the speed limit, essentially, in top gear, and have the engine turning almost 2,000 RPMs. It's just not necessary. It's such a strong engine that you could get away with a taller final drive and have it be turning 1,500, 1,400, whatever our Duramax is turning in top gear. at like the speed limit, 65, 70 miles an hour. It is not turning 1,800 RPMs as this truck is. I think if you downshifted it to 5th gear, it would be turning 1,800. This thing in 10th gear, in the absolute top gear, again, at like the kind of speeds you're gonna go all day, for days and days at a time, it's just turning a little bit fast. And that has two implications. The first is that, the first and a lot less important, is that it's going to mean you're not quite going to get the fuel economy you could. You know, we're talking, again, 14 miles to the gallon right now. We could be looking 15, 16 plus if we had a 342. Because then, again, our revs would be down way down below 1,800. They'd be in like the 1,500 RPM range. And the second thing, and this is a little bit more important, is that we wouldn't be having what's happening now with that DPF. If you see, it's at 25%. So it's starting to fill up. And the reason it's starting to fill up is because the engine is really not under a lot of load right now. It's not under hardly any load. And so when the engine isn't really working that hard, your combustion pressures are down, your combustion temps are down, and so you start to have soot particles. You start to have the formation of soot particles, and you also start to have the DPF fill up because there isn't a ton of heat going through it. And what we saw yesterday going through the mountains, we went like 150 miles, 200 plus miles through the mountains, and didn't have any soot particles building up in the DPF, in the soot filter, any measurable soot levels. It stayed at 0 for like 150 plus miles, the entire like western half of Pennsylvania, as we were going west through Pennsylvania yesterday morning. And so, which is just another way of reiterating the fact that to keep that DPF clean, you gotta be running at highway speeds, and more importantly, with a decent amount of load and a decent amount of boost and a decent and high combustion temps in order to, and you know, burning fuel efficiently, cleanly at high temps to keep soot from forming in the first place, and secondly, to keep it from building up in the DPF. And so that's just an observation. Again, on flat ground, that DPF starts to fill up. Running through the mountains, it does not. And what we're speculating is that if you had a taller final drive like that 342, the engine will be working a little bit harder. You'll be under a little bit more load at lower RPMs, because in order to make the same amount of power turning lower RPMs, you have to be generating more combustion pressures and more torque, because power is just RPMs times your torque. So again, to push this thing 70 miles an hour at a lower RPM than it's turning now, you need to be generating more combustion pressure, meaning torque. And when you make more pressure in those combustion chambers, you're burning the fuel hotter, and you're making less soot, and you're sending hot exhaust out through the exhaust system and not filling up that soot filter. So that's just an observation again. On the flip side, because you have less efficient combustion happening, you're also using less DEF, less diesel exhaust fluid. We've gone more than 100 miles since we filled it up. We filled it up probably 20 miles outside Chicago, heading into Chicago this morning. And so we've gone, let's just call it 125 miles, and the level is still at 100, which means we're not using diesel exhaust fluid. And so it's like two sides to the same coin. You know, the less load your engine is under, the less DEF it's going to use, because your combustion temps are so much cooler, and so you're not generating nitrogen oxides. But but at the same time, you're also generating a lot more soot particles, and the exhaust is colder, and so the DPF starts to load up. It's just something to pass along, like an observation we've been making. A couple other things. There was a gentleman that made a comment on one of the videos, and he said, "Why the hell are you driving a Lariat? Why the hell are you testing such expensive trucks? Don't people know what a truck is meant for?" And the answer is yes, we know what a truck is meant for, because we use our trucks as trucks all the time. But the problem is the way Ford has set things up, as we've discussed numerous times in the past. You have to step up to a higher trim level to get the options you want. With both of our F-150s we bought in the last couple of years, we were able to get away with buying XLTs and still get the features we wanted. With this Super Duty, the 23 Super Duty we bought, no, we had to get a Lariat in order to get the features we wanted. And that includes things like your 12-inch screen, your heads-up display, some of the towing features, some of the camera systems. We got leather seats, which we don't really need and don't really have a lot of desire for, but they're nice to have. And just the way it turned out, it was going to cost us almost as much to spec out an XLT the way we wanted it as it did to spec out a Lariat the way we wanted it. Again, the heads-up display, we use that thing all day, every day, and once you get used to it, it's kind of hard to go without. The self-driving system, specifically lane keeping and lane centering, and adaptive cruise control. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you need to have the Lariat package in order to get that system, and that system is a life-changing thing. Even though they've disabled lane centering when you've got a trailer hitched up, but we know how to get around that, and we'll be doing that at some point in the near future. And so no, it's tragic that Ford makes you pay so much damn money to get a truck with the features that you want, or the features that you need, given how much driving you're doing. But as we've said many times, Ford's #1 specialty is knowing how to take your money. Something else to pass along, another observation: the price of diesel is not what you expect in different states. For instance, where we live in eastern Pennsylvania, it's like 50, 60, 80 cents, almost $1 cheaper to drive across the border and buy diesel in New Jersey, because of how much less the gas tax is, or the fuel tax, in New Jersey versus Pennsylvania. And New Jersey is like one of the most heavily taxed states in the country, if not the most heavily, and yet they've got a much less lower fuel tax, gas tax, than Pennsylvania does. Same thing in the Midwest. We thought Michigan or Indiana would be the best place to top off. Most definitely Indiana, because it's considered the most business-friendly state in the Midwest, and it has, generally speaking, the lowest taxes. But no, the cheapest place to top off for like hundreds of miles around is Illinois. We got diesel for $3.99 this morning. This morning being Saturday, September 30th. And again, it's like $4.50. It's well over $4 in Michigan, well over $4 in Indiana, and yet it's $3.99 in Illinois. Again, one of those high tax, high regulation states. So there's really no rhyme or reason to it. It's not what you'd expect. A couple other things. The steering on this Super Duty, and now that we've started putting healthy amounts of miles on it, the steering continues to surprise and impress us, because it's got a straight axle, and we have had a strong disdain for trucks with straight axles in the front, because they don't have rack and pinion steering. They've got, the steering box and the track arm and all that stuff that you use when you're driving a truck with a solid axle front end. but this steering is exceptionally accurate, exceptionally precise. The truck does not wander all over the road. You still don't get a ton of feedback, but at least the truck knows how to drive in a straight line. And that's a lot more than we could say for the last straight axle front end that we had in a truck, which was our 06 Cummins 4-wheel drive. And that thing, you had to be like correcting the steering every single second because it was just all over the road, and it was exhausting to drive that truck. It was just constantly trying to go off the road. And we had to get rid of it, partly because of how badly it steered. It was a 3rd gen, and the 3rd gen Cummins, if you get it in a 2-wheel drive, it's got an independent front end. It's got very, very tight steering. It feels like you're driving a sports car practically. Lots and lots of feedback. The best steering in any heavy-duty pickup we've ever driven. And so we were not super thrilled about that one aspect of this Super Duty that we were getting into. And it's turned out, no, that it steers just fine. It steers absolutely fine. And there's just no issues. The other thing that was an open question to us was the ride quality. Now, driving, when you're in town and you're going over all those bumps on the pavement in whatever town or city you live in, yeah, the ride in this thing is punishing, as you would expect from a 1-ton 4-wheel drive heavy-duty pickup. The ride on the highway is not bad at all. Not bad at all. Especially when it's loaded. Other observations. No, that was the main thing. Again, the fuel economy, it's just impressing the hell out of us. At highway speeds, on level ground, it's 14 plus miles to the gallon, which is again, a lot better than we expected. A whole lot better than we expected. And again, in the mountains, it's in like the upper 12s, low 13s. Pulling a 6, 7, 8,000 pound trailer. And as stated, if you go with the taller final drive, like the 342, you can probably do even better on your MPGs. And you might also do better in terms of not having that DPF start to fill up when the engine's under less load, or when the truck's under less load. Because since your RPMs are going to be lower in top gear, your engine's going to be having to make a little more torque to keep that truck moving down the road. Okay, I guess that's it. Nothing else to pass along. Hope you all are having a pleasant day. We've had a beautiful day. It was 80 plus degrees in Michigan and Illinois today. Absolutely beautiful day. And for the end of September 30th, that's not bad. It's usually starting to get much colder, much quicker than that in the upper Midwest here, but not today. All right, well, thanks everyone. Have a great evening, and we will talk to you later.